Never fixable? They laughed at her as a mechanic until the engine roared back at midnight. The night was heavy with tension as the moon cast eerie shadows over the rusty junkyard. An old Dodge sat perched atop a mound, a relic of the past, long abandoned and deemed irreparable. But there was something about it, a hidden spark, a whisper of life lurking beneath layers of grease and neglect. The townsfolk scoffed at Mira, the mechanic with a knack for the impossible. Little did they know that the midnight hour would reveal more than just her skills. It would unveil a haunting secret embedded deep within those cracked gears. The wind howled through the twisted metal, carrying with it a chill that sank into the bones. Mira felt that cold touch as she wiped her hands on her worn blue coveralls, staring at the Dodge with an odd mixture of determination and fear. The whispers of other mechanics echoed in her mind. That engine ain't ever gonna run again. They laughed, their taunts a chilling wind that drove her forward. But something about this hunk of rust was different. She had a feeling, a gut instinct that defied logic. And as she popped the hood, a strange energy enveloped her, tangible and almost electric. Her heart raced as she leaned closer to inspect the engine. The tools around her felt foreign, almost like they had a life of their own. Each wrench and screwdriver seemed to hum with anticipation. The air was thick with mystery, as if the very atmosphere held its breath. "If only you could talk," she whispered to the Dodge, her voice almost drowned out by the sudden rumble of thunder in the distance. An omen? Or was it a sign? Her hands trembled as she reached for the ignition, the enormity of her choice weighing down like a heavy blanket. Before we continue, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Mira closed her eyes and turned the key. The engine sputtered, a painful cough echoing through the stillness, then fell silent. Despair washed over her like a cold wave. The townsfolk would feast on this moment, their laughter ringing in her ears. But just as she was about to give in to defeat, she felt a pulse of heat radiating from the engine, a heartbeat she could almost see. Then silence shattered like glass when the engine roared back to life, a guttural growl that sent shocks through her entire being. The noise echoed against the junkyard walls, ricocheting into the night like an unwelcome guest. Standing there, face aglow with disbelief, she was struck by a realization. This junker held a secret that could unravel the very fabric of the town. But as she looked up, a shadow shifted behind the old truck, something dark and menacing tucked in the alleyway, watching her. Who or what were they waiting for? The pulse of the engine thrummed in sync with her racing heart as terror gripped at her throat. What had she awakened? The growl of the engine faded into an unsettling silence, leaving Mira's heart hammering in her chest. She squinted into the shadows, the alleyway swallowed by the thick darkness. The air crackled with unspoken words, a tension heavy enough to crush her resolve. "Simon, come on," she whispered to herself, trying to shake off the creeping dread that settled over her. The voice of the townsfolk echoed in her head, harsh laughter ringing like bells. But this time she felt a stranger's presence pulse through her veins, urging her to confront what loomed just out of sight. What is hiding back there? Mira took a cautious step toward the shadows, but the wind whipped around her, carrying a low, warning growl that sent her heart plummeting. She backed up, eyes darting between the Dodge and the hollow darkness. It felt as if the car was trying to communicate, urging her to listen, to understand. Suddenly, a cat screeched from the distance, shattering the stillness, causing her to jump. A silhouette peeled away from the wall. A figure stepped into the ghostly moonlight. When it finally emerged, all fear washed away, replaced by disbelief. It was Paul, the town mechanic who had ridiculed Mira time and again. "What in the world are you doing here?" Mira snapped, a mixture of anger and relief flooding her voice, that he took a step closer, eyes wide in disbelief as he pointed shakily at the Dodge. "You actually got it to run?" His voice trembled, awash with a strange blend of admiration and fear. "Why are you lurking in the shadows, Paul?" She shot back, suspicion thick as tar. "I wanted to see. I didn't believe you could," he admitted, a nervous laugh escaping his lips that felt more like a choke. "But this isn't right. You need to stop messing with something that has been dormant for so long." "Dormant?" she echoed, incredulous. "This thing has a pulse. It's alive." As if responding to her claim, the engine thudded, thrummed louder, casting an almost hypnotic vibration through the air. Mira felt it repeatedly tugging at her. Something deeper was at play. "Listen, Mira," he said, eyes darting around as if the shadows themselves were listening. "It's not just an old engine. There's a reason it was left here. You can't just wake it up and expect everything to be fine." Before she could question him further, a low rumble echoed through the ground, and the darkness seemed to shudder. Suddenly, the lights of the junkyard flickered, casting jagged shadows that danced along the walls. Paul's face went pale, dread etched deep into his features as he took a step back. "Mira, you need to stop," he shouted, panic rising like bile in his throat. "You don't know what you're dealing with." But she couldn't pull away now. She was drawn in, the secrets calling her closer. What had she awakened? The engine throbbed as she approached. The shadows danced, moving unnaturally, casting eerie shapes on the walls. Mira took a deep breath, fighting against the inexplicable urge to turn back. Then, a chilling whisper slipped through the air, wrapping around her like a vine. "Mira." It was soft but unmistakable, a haunting echo that chilled her spine. Help us, her breath hitched. Was the Dodge speaking to her? Or was it something else, something waiting for the right moment to reveal itself? Before she could answer that silent plea, something shifted within the darkness, a silhouette breaking from the remnants of a forgotten past. What else had her awakening stirred? The shadows twisted, morphing into an unpredictable shape that stole Myra's breath. Her instincts screamed to run, but her feet felt rooted to the ground. Paul grabbed her arm, his grip fierce, trying to pull her back. "You have to get out of here. Now." "Wait," Mira shouted, shaking off his hold. The Dodge's tremors grew, resonating as if the assembly of metal and rust was alive. A darker silhouette emerged further into the alley, clutching the edges of the shadows as if they belonged to it. "Mira, don't." Paul's voice cracked, nearly drowning in the tension. "It's not just an old car. It's a gateway. Can't you see?" Her eyes flickered between him and the shifting mass, curiosity clawing at her. "Gateway? To what?" But before Paul could respond, the spine-chilling whisper returned, thickening the air. "Help us." A pair of glowing eyes flickered in the darkness yellow, like the sun dipped in poison. The figure stepped forward, revealing itself as a morphed being. Half man, half machine, its face an antique mask smeared with dirt and despair. Myra's heart raced with confusion and fear, but she took a step toward the abomination, unable to resist the pull. "Who are you?" she dared to ask, her voice trembling. "I was once like you," it hissed, its tone weaving through the night like smoke. "A builder, a dreamer. But here, we are trapped, bound to the remnants of what should have never awakened." "What do you mean? What do you want?" "The engine, it has powers beyond your understanding. Release us, and we can show you." It paused, the corners of its mouth twitching, hungry for her response. Paul stepped between them, panic flashing in his eyes. "Don't listen to it, Mira. It's using you. You don't want to awaken whatever lies beneath. It feeds on desire, on hope and madness." But Mira felt herself drifting deeper, yearning to understand what was beyond. The whispers and screeches echoed in her mind, drowning Paul's warnings in a cacophony of secret promises. "What will happen if I release you?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Freedom," it replied, its voice cracking like thunder. "Together, we will reshape this world. Join us." Mira's pulse raced. Questions spun in her head like a tornado. Freedom or a curse? Paul's growing dread was palpable as he searched her eyes, desperate. Mira, listen. Once they're free, there's no going back. It's a trick. The town. It all hinges on keeping this place and that car buried. The ground shook violently, a shockwave of raw power smashing through her thoughts. A whispering chorus rose from the shadows. Join us, each syllable tugged at her, desperate and compelling. No, Paul shouted, his voice breaking through the murmurs. You don't understand. They'll consume you. The figure lunged closer, and Mira staggered back, feeling the fabric of reality thin, the world blurring around the edges. Help us, they echoed again, this time layered with hidden pain, tempting her like a song she couldn't resist. Paul grasped her wrist tighter as a blinding light erupted from the engine, illuminating everything around them. The junkyard transformed into a stage of nightmares and promises. She felt the energy course through her, electrifying and intoxicating. Mira, Paul's desperate cry, fueled her resolve for just a moment. But the engine roared, drowning out all reason. She was teetering on the edge of a precipice, choice looming like an impending storm. And suddenly, in that fevered moment, she glanced at Paul. What would she choose? A life of mundane dismissal, or a leap into the unknown that could set her free? The story was brewing, and she was at the center. With her heart racing and breath hitching, she took a definitive step forward, letting the shadows envelop her once more. What lay beyond the flickering veil of reality? Would she save or doom them all? The moment Mira stepped forward, the world cracked open like an egg, unleashing chaos. The blinding light from the engine intensified, wrapping around her like a cocoon, pulsing with energy that coursed through her veins like wildfire. She felt weightless, suspended between fear and wonder, a thread dangling over a chasm of unknown. Mira, no. Paul's scream was a lifeline, but the shadows clung to her, urging her to cross the threshold. The morphed figure loomed larger now, its wild eyes reflecting her inner turmoil. Let go of the past. You can be reborn. Reborn? Mira echoed, the words slipping off her tongue like an incantation. The whispers grew louder, a haunting melody unfurling in her mind, promising untold truths, the revelation of secrets hidden beneath layers of rust and dust. Yes, the creature hissed, its voice a low growl that reverberated through the trembling ground. Join the collective. We will be whole again. Images flickered in her mind like a film reel of laughter, of sorrow, of a life unfulfilled. She remembered the nights spent fixing engines, the peaceful hum of machinery under her hands. What if embracing this darkness meant unlocking her true potential? What if all her dreams hadn't been in vain? Paul lunged, desperation etched on his face. You don't know what you're dealing with. You think you can control them? They'll twist your desires until nothing's left but despair. But each word felt like a distant echo, swallowed by the deeper call of the shadows. She could almost taste the sweetness of freedom, and it tasted like hope, a hope that had been suffocating for too long. If sensing her hesitation, the creature took a step forward, its hand outstretched. Choice is just a shadow of its own. Are you ready to break free? Mira's heart thundered in her chest. She could see pain mingled with desperation in the figure's eyes, a reflection of her own agony. What would sacrificing herself mean? Would it be a tragedy or a sacrifice for the greater good? Don't do this, Paul shouted, his voice cracking like glass. He was fighting against something primal, something that pulled her like gravity. With a sudden surge of defiance, she stepped further into the light, feeling strings of fate tightening around her. As the shadows converged, a whisper crept into her mind, wrapping around her like a lover's embrace. Help us, but was she helping them, or sealing her own fate? Then, just as her fingers grazed the surface of the engine, a heavy hand gripped her shoulder, jerking her back. It was Paul, eyes wild with fear. You're stronger than this. Don't let it take you. The weight of his plea crashed over her, unraveling the haze briefly. If she fell into this abyss, would she ever emerge? The figures behind the shadows stirred restlessly. Several more glowing eyes appeared, an army of empathetic whispers and haunting moans. Paul's grip was hard, grounding her. Yet the power surged in her, a tempest of dreams and desires that threatened to spill over. Mira, he breathed, searching her eyes for the spark of the girl he knew, the mechanic who believed in fixing what was broken. She stood there, suspended between what was real and what could be, feeling time stretch and contract. The engine pulsed, vibrating with anticipation, and all around them, the spirits ached for release. Mira, please. Paul's voice pierced through the impending darkness, a light flickering against the shadows. Would she take his hand and step back into the mundane, or embrace the unknown, plunging headfirst into a world of chaos and despair? The shadows loomed closer, stretching out a longing hand toward her, alive with possibility. The vibrations intensified, clamoring like a war drum in her ears. In that split second, choice loomed, heavy with consequence. Would she be the one to ignite the storm, or make the ultimate sacrifice to save everything she held dear? And, as the ground trembled beneath their feet, she felt an odd sense of exhilaration. What would happen when she finally let go? In a heartbeat, she realized she'd have to decide. To save Paul or to embrace the call of the shadows that beckoned. The decision weighed heavily on her like an anvil, and all at once, the world shattered around her, leaving her standing on the edge of destiny. The moment of choice had come. Would she dare to plunge into the depths? Mira felt an electric pulse thrum through her, each beat synchronized with the chaos surrounding her. Shadows danced in her peripheral vision, blurring the line between dread and allure. She glanced at Paul, his face a mix of horror and an almost desperate hope, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze around them. The creature stepped even closer, its eyes shimmering like two fragmented stars. You fear the unknown. It can be your salvation, Mira. The shadows writhed eagerly, licking at her feet like flames. Stay. Fight. Paul's voice was strained, but resolve burned in his eyes. This isn't. Was it? In the depths of her heart, Mira felt that familiar yearning, the need to be seen, to matter in a world that often overlooked her. The engine pulsed with life, mirroring her heartbeat, reminding her of the power she always brushed aside. Could she find a way to wield it without losing herself? Suddenly, the ground underfoot shuddered violently. A fissure appeared, jagged and deep, threatening to swallow them whole. Mira, it's happening. You have to choose, Paul shouted, his voice seemingly drowned out by the rumbling earth. The shadows jerked like a tide, pulling back momentarily, almost as if sensing the gravity of the choice before her. Leave him, the creature whispered, its voice now softer, more seductive. Embrace your true self. Let go of doubt and fear. You will be powerful, one with us. Images flashed before her eyes. Her father bent over a worn-out engine, laughter bubbling as they crafted something new from rubble. The wrench in her hand felt right, a connection to the world. But behind that warmth, the shadows spun their dark tales, whispering promises of freedom that felt intoxicating. Mira, Paul faltered, the weight of his emotions threatening to crush him. I can't lose you. You mean everything. His plea struck a chord deep within her. She looked into the void stretching between her and everything she'd ever known, the potential that lay in both choices, and a conflict ignited inside her. Would she step forward with the shadows or retreat with Paul? I can't do this without you, Paul continued, desperation edging his voice. Each word wrapped around her tightly, anchoring her to the ground. But the shadows hissed, fluttering like restless spirits, pressing against her skin with an overwhelming heat. Join us, they chanted, a chorus of longing that pulsed in her ears. The shadows pulsed like a heartbeat, pushing against the gaping chasm like a breathing entity. They were right there, close enough to touch, close enough to become part of the collective. Mira felt the coil of despair tightening around Paul's heart, felt the urgency of his presence. But what if this opportunity meant truly becoming someone she could never have imagined? The ground throbbed, shadows swirling and sinking into the fissure. In a whirlwind of movement, Mira's mind raced, battling urges. The chaos clamored louder, drowning out the world. But it was Paul's face that quelled the storm, a lighthouse cutting through the tumult. "Promise me you'll come back," Paul gasped, barely audible above the noise. It was more than a request. It was a lifeline thrown into the abyss. But right then, the shadows surged, blinding her. Mira wrestled against its grip, her body aching to step forward while her heart urged her backward. Images of a life undone flashed, of surrendering to darkness versus forging a path against it. The ground bucked again, and as Paul stumbled, she felt the weight of possibilities flooding her senses, each laced with fear and that glimmer of hope. "Mira," he shouted again, eyes shining with an unbearable fear that in an instant, she made her choice, a flicker of clarity cutting through the chaos. She didn't want to lose herself, but could she truly be both? With a cry that echoed with strength, she flicked her gaze back to the shadows. "No, I want to let this take me." But right as she summoned her resolve, a new revelation throbbed in her gut, a spark illuminating her inner turmoil. What if she could reshape it? What if the shadows didn't only represent despair, but a path to understanding her true power? The darkness recoiled, sensing her defiance. And as the ground shook again, she braced herself for the consequences, because this wasn't just about her anymore. Everything was about to change. What would it mean to embrace both the shadows and the light? Myra's heart raced as the sheer force of the shadows pulsed against her. The fear of what lay beneath the surface clawed at her, drawing her closer to the gaping darkness. She could feel the heat of the fissure biting at her ankles, a reminder of the unfamiliar destiny waiting to consume her. "Mira, please." Paul's voice trembled, dragging her back to reality. "Don't let them win. You control your fate." For a fleeting instant, the shadows paused as if they held their breath, gauging her reaction. It was almost surreal, the way the ambience shifted, the oppressive energy ebbing just enough for her thoughts to race freely. But control felt irrelevant in this space. What was control when a decision could fracture her so profoundly? Mira glimpsed the shadows swirling below, like whispers of a million secrets begging to be unleashed, and they thrummed with temptation. "Just let go." They beckoned in a siren's call. Reflecting on her father's teachings, she remembered their moments together in the dim workshop, surrounded by the mechanical hum of engines. "You got to understand the heart of every machine, Mira," he told her, "or it'll consume you." The weight of his words anchored her. Shadows were merely another part of the system, waiting for someone to guide them. "Stand with me," Paul shouted, his voice cutting through the turmoil. It ignited a flicker of rebellion within her. "No," she screamed back at the shadows. "You want to control me? You think I will simply give in?" The wrath of the darkness surged, a whirlwind of shadows that writhed in outrage. But as they spiraled around her in a frantic dance, they began to shift in form, morphing before her eyes, revealing glimpses of despair, rage, but also aching beauty. It felt like a collective of souls vying for freedom, each struggling but yearning for release. "Don't fight it, Mira," the creature cooed, its voice dripping with allure. "You can be limitless." Think of the power, the freedom visions flared behind her eyes, muffled laughter from classmates who dismissed her mechanical skills, the sting of insults ricocheting in her mind, the feeling of never truly fitting in. Living in the shadows of others felt suffocating, and yet embracing them offered a different kind of freedom. Paul stepped closer, shaking his head, his expression a whirlwind of desperation and defiance. "Mira, you are more than any of this. You really can forge your own path." In that urgency, a spark ignited deep within her. She refused to be a pawn in this shadowy game. Instead, she could wield it. Dark power didn't have to represent despair. It could be the raw energy of creation and strength. The ground heaved again, and with every throb, she felt her resolve harden. Flashes of what she could become collided in a brilliant explosion of light and shadow, a mechanic, a creator, a force of nature. Embrace both, Paul yelled, desperation sharpening his voice. Make it your own. She inhaled sharply, each breath fueling the fire within. You can't take me. She felt a wild energy thrumming, resonating with the pulsing shadows coursing beneath her, changing from an entity demanding to a power she could wield. Mira thrust her arms forward, directing the shadow tide. She focused every ounce of her will, crafting a vortex of energy that swirled toward the fissure with fierce determination. The shadows recoiled, caught off guard by her newfound control, but Mira stood undaunted. As the maelstrom twisted, the fissure began to heal, sealing the energy inside, defying the creature's expectations. No, what are you doing? It shrieked, panic blossoming in its voice. With the ground stabilizing beneath her feet, Mira's heart thundered, knowing a new chapter had begun. She had twisted the narrative, redirecting the chaos into a force that danced at her command. But as the shadows shivered, something deep within the darkness stirred a response born from the depths of cosmic chaos, an echo of something much greater than her. The ground trembled again, a warning of untold horrors upon the horizon. Mira turned to Paul, eyes wide, breath ragged. What was that? The shadows shifted ominously, whispering her name like an old friend. Something far worse is coming, Paul said, fear tightening his brow. And behind them, a new wave of darkness began to swell, promising yet another trial. What nightmare awaited her as the shadows transformed into something far more sinister? Mira felt the air grow heavy, thickening with dread as the echoes of that cosmic chaos curled around her. The shadows surged, no longer simply an entity she could mold, but a looming darkness with its own malevolent pulse. Paul's grip tightened on her arm, pulling her back, urging her to retreat from the edge of the fissure. Focus, Mira, he shouted over the cacophony, a distorted melody of moans and whispers that clawed at her psyche. We can't stay here. But her heart raced for an entirely different reason. She wasn't just afraid. She was intrigued. The hungering depths of darkness called to her, a twisted invitation that tangled with memories of her father's workshop, where machines breathed life under her touch. Stay close, she managed to say, pushing herself against the encroaching shadow. It felt electric, like static before storm. I will not let it take us. Just as she steadied her resolve, a pulse of energy erupted from the fissure. At first, it was a gentle hum, a whisper of latent power coursing through the ground beneath her feet. But it shifted swiftly, turning into a deep rumble that resonated within her bones. Shadows coalesced, shaping themselves into jagged forms that flickered like flames. Mira, the creature's voice, slithered through the chaos, both seductive and sinister. You think you can bind me? I am the storm, the chaos, the void that nurtures fear itself. She gritted her teeth, summoning every ounce of strength from within. Her fingers tingled, and she focused on the shadows not as enemies, but as estranged allies. What she turned their chaos into something beautiful, something functional? In that moment, a new vision struck her. She could create a machine, not just any machine, but a guardian of sorts that could harness this darkness. Paul, we need to focus, she yelled, sparks of an idea igniting her mind. They'll tear you apart, he cried, panic threading through his voice. No, they can be tamed, Mira shouted back, her pulse quickening, just like any engine. With a lunge, she directed her hands towards the roiling mass, feeling the shadows swirl and writhe in response. It was an intoxicating dance of power, both thrilling and terrifying. The world blurred around her as she began to weave a tapestry of darkness, thinking back to the way her father taught her to combine pieces, to create something whole from broken parts. The aura around her grew brighter, brighter still until, with a deafening crash, the ground shook violently. A towering silhouette began to emerge, a blend of shadow and light, forming a spectral machine. It felt alive, pulsing rhythmically, almost in sync with her heartbeat. She could go deeper, further into the depths of her newfound connection with the shadows. "Step back," Paul warned, his voice shaking, yet filled with disbelief. "No, Paul. I'm in control," she retorted, conviction hitting like a hammer against her ribs. The shadows thrashed, suffused with anger and confusion, but Mira tightened her grasp on them. "You can't control me. I choose my path." In one wild, defiant surge, she unleashed the energy she had summoned. It exploded into the air as a radiant flash, absorbing every ounce of darkness around her. For a fleeting moment, Mira saw a glimpse of something her father's hands guiding hers, tools clicking together, forming machines that defied expectations. But then, the shadows recoiled, their whispers rising to a deafening roar, a chaotic protest against a rebellion. That ancient voice surged again, finally rising above the noise. "You dare challenge your birthright? You will regret this." Mira stumbled back as shards of darkness lashed at her, cutting through the air with a ferocity that made her skin crawl. The bindings she thought were strengthening instead pulled her deeper into the dark depths she had provoked. "What have you done?" Paul shouted, scrambling to her side. "I'm not giving up," she said, her breath hitching. But beneath her words, doubt began to creep. In this was different. The rage was not just chaos, it was survival. And the shadows were preparing for war. High above, the sky darkened, gathering clouds heavy with promise and peril, ready to unleash something unimaginable. The ground shifted ominously again, and underneath them, the cracks began to expand. Mira turned to Paul, fear dawning in her chest. What have we awakened? As the shadows grew feral, a chorus of furious voices climbed and fell in a haunting rhythm. The air vibrated with impending doom, and from somewhere distant, a chilling laughter echoed, lingering in the atmosphere like a sentence waiting to be completed. What awaited them as the wrath of a forgotten force surged, hungering for release? Mira braced herself, hair whipping around her face as the winds of chaos swept through the fissure. She could feel an unyielding energy begging to be molded, yet threatening to tear her apart. The spectral machine loomed ominously, its form flickering, unstable, a monument to the shadow's wrath. "Stay back," Paul shouted again, but she could see him wavering, fear mingling with awe in his eyes. He understood now, didn't he? This wasn't just madness. It was her chance to reclaim something her father had lost the power to shape, to heal. But the chaos shrieked, a cacophony that clawed at her confidence, each voice echoing her doubts. "You can't control it. You'll never be enough," they screamed, hurling memories and insecurities at her like daggers. "No, I'm more," Mira shouted back, squeezing her eyes shut to concentrate. In that moment of uncertainty, she could almost hear her father's voice steady and warm. "Feel the flow, Mira. Trust your instincts." The shadows intensified, each tendril reaching hungrily toward her, as if to snuff out her light. Heart pounding, she thought of her father in the workshop, building and fixing, his hands steady over jagged metal. Her hands, too, could be that steady. As if sensing her resolve, the shadows pulsed, momentarily calming. But the calm was deceptive, the silence before a storm that threatened to drown them in darkness. She drew in a deep breath, centering herself, focusing on the overlapping shadows. No matter how broken, they can be assembled. Just like machinery, she whispered, conviction fueling her words. Each whisper of the shadows became a soothing note, a reminder of balance within the chaos. With newfound courage, Mira thrust her palms forward, connecting with the energy. It swirled around her, feeding her, each pulse allowing her to shape the chaotic mass into something new. She envisioned gears and cogs forged from the very essence of that darkness, an engine designed to empower, not to destroy. "Can you hear that?" Paul's voice cracked in disbelief. It's changing." As the spectral machine responded to her, its shape morphed, shifting seamlessly between forms of cloud and metal as shadows danced like ethereal flames. The oppressive energy around them shifted, responding to her mastery instead of consuming her. Threads of darkness were woven into something magnificent, a guardian summoned from fear, pulsing with vibrant energy. But then, the laughter returned, sharp and slicing through her concentration. You think you can reshape me? I am the primal force. The shadows roared, and the machine trembled in defiance, as if aware of its identity crisis. No, you are part of me now, Mira insisted, channeling every fiber of her will. As the shadows fought against her, she felt the weight of ages resting on her shoulders. This was more than just a struggle for control. It was a battle for acceptance. Stop, Paul cried, his voice barely breaking through the tumult. Mira, it's too powerful. Not if we work together. She shot back. You have to believe. With a sharp intake of breath, Paul stepped forward, joining her as she channeled their combined energy toward the machine. In that shared moment, their fears intertwined, but so did their hope. The swirling mass surged forward, coalescing into a magnificent being, each part symbolizing resistance against the chaos that sought to engulf them. Suddenly, a beam of light split the darkness, illuminating the chaos around them. The machine roared to life, its eyes glowing with a fierce determination, like a guardian awakening. Mira felt her heart surge with possibility. This was the beginning of something powerful, something worth fighting for. But it didn't last. The shadows howled in protest, creating a violent backlash that threw them backward. Mira felt pain shoot through her body as darkness clawed at her once more, desperation fueling its ferocity. Paul, she gasped, reaching for him as the ground trembled violently. The cracks widened beneath them, revealing luminescent eyes of ancient horrors eager to join the fray. Run, Paul yelled, but fear gripped Mira's heart even tighter than the darkness. No, I want to abandon the fight, she shouted, bracing against the chaos like a warrior determined to stand her ground. In the distance, dark clouds rumbled ominously, splitting open to reveal swirling, tempestuous forms, ready to spill forth what lay inside. The air thickened, heavy with portent, as the shadows writhed in defiance of her will. A chilling question settled in her chest, echoing louder than the chaos surrounding her. Could she truly tame the darkness, or had she unleashed a force that would consume them both? What lurked within those ominous clouds, ready to join the battle for her soul? Myra's heart pounded loudly in her ears, drowning out the chaos swirling around her. The ground shook violently, each tremor resonating deep within her bones. She felt not just the darkness, but the weight of countless spirits, their hopes, their regrets. They reached out, clawing at her with cold, phantom fingers. It was overwhelming. Keep your eyes on the machine, Paul shouted, his voice strained as he struggled against the pull of the shadows. Focus, Mira. Taking a deep breath, she honed in on the spectral construct that had become her unlikely ally. With her hands raised, she poured all her energy into it. The machine flickered, its form restless and uncertain. One moment it resembled twisted metal. The next, it flowed like liquid midnight. But Mira could feel it accepting her energy, reshaping itself, just as she had envisioned. Stop this! A voice cried out from the churning darkness, rich with malice. You think you can wield me? You are nothing. It was taunting her, and yet she felt a spark within, a defiance growing in her. I am something, Mira snapped, a fierce determination igniting her spirit. I am the link between light and shadow. As if responding to her declaration, the machine's glow intensified, casting beams of iridescent light across the chaos. Shadows recoiled, hissing angrily as they recoiled from the brightness. The tempest above roared with fury, dark clouds twisting and tumbling, unleashing jagged bolts of lightning. Each crack sounded like thunderous applause for her resolve, but the applause rang hollow in her chest. Paul, we need to pull them back, she urged, casting a desperate look over her shoulder at him, their eyes locking for just a moment. They needed a plan, a true bond of belief stronger than mere words. I can open a path, he replied, fear and adrenaline intermingling in his voice. His hands extended toward the swirling darkness, and for a moment, the chaos dimmed in response to their shared determination. He nodded resolutely. Let us do this together, Mira shouted, channeling her energy into their connection as they focused on the machine. Together, they summoned a brilliant wave of light that cascaded outward, pushing back the shadows inch by inch. But the darkness clamped down, almost sentient in its rage. The shadows twisted violently, fighting against their collective power. Myra's heart sank as she felt the raw dread of the darkness pooling beneath her. From the crevice below, something stirred, thrashing in response to their defiance. The glow from the machine dimmed, strained under the weight of the darkness. Don't lose hope, Mira, Paul shouted, his eyes wide with fear but steady. Remember the goal, what we're fighting for. A surge of warmth filled her chest, her father's face, illuminated by the flickering lights of the workshop, his laughter ringing in her ears. Never give in to despair, he had taught her, right? She whispered to herself as a flicker of defiance sparked within her. Gripping tightly to that warmth, she forged ahead, extending her hands further, feeling the skin stretch painfully as the shadows pulsed against her. The air crackled around her, a palpable shimmer of power. With one final push, she visualized breaking down the wall of darkness, transmuting fear into energy, shadows into purpose. Mira, look out, Paul shouted, but it was too late. A sudden ferocious wave erupted from the abyss. It surged forward, engulfing her. Screaming, Mira fought against it, straining to channel the power through her, the noble essence of the spectral machine feeling more like chains than a companion. And then she felt a pull underneath. The horror from the depths began to surge upwards, its presence dark and suffocating, grabbing hold of her soul. Eyes like embers glimmered in the chaos, promising secrets and destruction. Help me, she cried in that moment of desperation. Time seemed to slow as the shadows roared again, threatening to consume and conquer. What's coming is not just shadows. It's something else, Paul's voice echoed faintly through her panic. As everything darkened. Around her, the dreadful question formed in her mind. Were they truly fighting the shadows, or had they merely unleashed an ancient terror lurking beneath, ready to awaken? What would they face if they couldn't turn the tide? And would they be consumed before they ever truly understood what they were up against? Mira felt herself drowning in a sea of darkness, each gasp a struggle as the shadows thrummed with raw power around her. The air was electric, charged with dread, and it felt like the very fabric of reality was breaking apart. Mira, Paul's voice was a faint flicker of hope in the echoing chaos. We need to anchor ourselves, or we want to survive this. She squeezed her eyes shut, summoning that warmth from memory, the laughter of her father, the reunion of man and machine. I am more than what I've been told, she screamed, letting the energy build within her. The spiraling shadows recoiled at her defiance, and she felt a surge of control. She could shift, mold them, bend the darkness to her will. It was chaotic, wild, but imbued with the understanding she was not just a mechanic. She was a creator. Work with me, Paul shouted, his voice slicing through the storm. It ignited something in Mira. She nodded, feeling their connection strengthen deeper than fear, rooting her to reality. Together, they both yelled, drawing from the depths of their shared resolve. With everything she possessed, Mira reached for the spectral machine, feeling its form vibrate with anticipation. This is the conduit, she declared, directing her focus at the shadows churning beneath them. In that moment, she felt the energy intertwine, the darkness shifted, becoming an extension of her being instead of a threat that suffocated her. The machine roared back to life, its glow blooming like a sunrise within the dark. She could feel its energy drawing the chaos into a vortex, a swirling dance of shadows, light, and electricity. It felt like breathing, expanding, and contracting, alive with possibility. "Release!" Mira shouted, throwing back her arms as the machine surged outward, forming a barrier against the encroaching darkness. The shadows recoiled and screamed, their fury palpable, but they couldn't penetrate the force that Mira and Paul had conjured. The darkness was a relentless tide, but they had anchored themselves, two brave souls unwilling to bend to despair. As Mira channeled her will, she saw the macabre visage of the entity shift, its eye-like embers turning to disappointment and then fury. "You think you've won? I am the endless night. You will bow," it howled, the ground shaking beneath them, as if the earth itself amplified its threats. "No," Mira shouted back, a primal scream of conviction. "You are part of what was, but you do not own the future." With each syllable, she thought of her dreams, her father's legacy, and the freedom she yearned for so much brighter than the shadows' call. "You're just as trapped as those you can find. I will not let you take us." The machine pulsed in rhythm with her words, pouring swirling light against the shadows, illuminating their darkest corners. "This ends now," Paul yelled, his voice harmonizing with hers, the sound reverberating through the ghosts of the past. Together, they cast the light forward, driving it through the heart of the shadows. In a blinding flash, everything flipped. An eruption of energy blasted outward, illuminating the junkyard with a brilliance that tore apart the consuming dread. The shadows surged back, threatening to engulf everything. But Mira felt unfazed, her heart swelling with fierce strength as she refused to let the darkness win. Paul gripped her hand tightly. "We'll push through." Time stretched and compressed as Mira felt the weight of countless spirits tethered to the darkness struggle against the pull of their energy. But she would let them down. "I'm here for you," she cried out, pouring every ounce of belief into her words. "You have to fight." And just like that, she saw them faces appearing from the shadows, visions of their struggles woven into the fabric of darkness that could finally appreciate the light. Each ghostly presence whispered gratitude, merging strength with their resolve. In one overwhelming moment, the shadows morphed, curling in on themselves, like a wave folding into the ocean. Finally, the chaos imploded, and with one last colossal surge of light, the shadows shattered, dissipating like smoke against a rising sun. The world changed. Mira blinked as the darkness faded, revealing the junkyard bathed in moonlight, its twisted metal now standing serene against the night sky. Silently, the remnants of the shadows lifted, vanishing like specters at dawn. No longer were they the taunting force of despair. They had transformed, harmonizing with the light. Mira turned to Paul, their eyes meeting relief flooding their expressions. "They had done it. Did we?" she began, but Paul cut in, grinning. "We not only survived, we set them free." They stood beneath the serene moon, feeling the echo of the triumph pulse through their veins. The price they had paid, the energy of the machine, had metamorphosed not just the vehicle, but the very essence of the town itself. But even amid the victory, a distant sense of purpose whispered to Mira. "This was not the end. We need to share this," she said, determination reworking itself anew. "Others need to understand the power in embracing both shadow and light." Paul nodded, a gleam in his eye. "We will, together." As they walked away from the remnants of fear, each step resonated with the promise of a new beginning. The shadows no longer seen as an enemy, but as an essential part of their journey. In that moment, Mira knew she had found her voice and purpose, both mechanic and dreamer, builder of a better world forged from resilience. She smiled softly at the sky, the stars twinkling down as if celebrating their triumph, and felt a deep connection to every face of the past. This wasn't just her fight, it was theirs too. "Now, let us get to work," Mira said, already picturing the many machines to come. In those lingering shadows of the past, they had ignited a light of hope that would shine forevermore. as the screen fades to black. Remember that this is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next exclusive stories coming your way. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep this story alive. And don't forget, flood the comment section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Your voice matters. Finally, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this monumental conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to spread the word. True fans know how vital you are to the heartbeat of this community.